All right, so we're about hour and a half in. Let's get some more subjects in before it gets too long.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think I want to kind of go backtrack on the idea of women and girls being socialized a bit differently to be somewhat less accountable. So it's clear enough that the socialization aspect is important, and in my personal opinion, I think any kind of notions about the biology is a bit overstated. I think it's not nothing. The biology is not nothing. The evolution is not nothing. But I think we're not, because we're so afraid of the social constructivist sort of angle here. We're kind of pushing back on it a little bit too far. I think we're not taking account enough of the socialization, and I call this biological argument for gynocentrism its own special category. I call it bio-gynocentrism, and it's basically this idea that we were, it's in our blood to be servants towards the wholly female class, and just throwing out evolution, science, that kind of thing. That's just the way
Yeah.
I see it. So I don't know what your thoughts on those are, but
Since you made me more aware of it, it actually got me thinking of something else. I'm going to take this back to my dad.
okay, yeah, sure. Let's,
It's
yeah.
like you can kind of tell who my heroes are in
Oh,
my life.
absolutely. Yeah.
When I was a little kid, we had a doctor that told my parents that I wasn't going to make it to 21. That if something didn't change, I was at some point I was going to um, basically suffocate to death with an asthma attack. And
Oh,
there was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
nothing but hard work that would change it. And my body's natural biological tendency was to freak out basically over ordinary non-threatening substances. I'm allergic to grass. Like, you can't go anywhere to get away from grass except the desert. And, that was one of his things. He's like, you can move to the desert. And I didn't, yeah, I'm kind of glad they didn't raise me in the desert. I
Yeah.
really, I don't know how I would have felt differently, but I love nature. I'm allergic to it, but I love it anyway, you know. And I was one of those kids that was dumb about it. I'd come in the house and my face would be swelled up, my eyes would be swelled shut. And my mom would be like, "Were you petting the neighbor's cats?" And I'm like, "No." "Yes, you were. You were petting the neighbor's
Oh
cats,
man.
weren't you?" "How do you know? You got cat hair all over your shirt." I was severely allergic to cats. Not so bad now.
Okay.
And so the natural tendency, like there's two pathways you can take with that. What they were doing at the time with kids with my level of and type of asthma and the number of allergies that I had was you don't go outside very much. You stay in the house in the air conditioning and you read and you don't get overactive and you don't get overexcited and so on. And you just live that way your whole life. And
Mhm.
you're this frail little underweight, um, almost helpless like thing. And that was never going to be in my character.
Mhm.
Um, I was obnoxiously not that, and my parents knew that would kill me. So
Yeah.
my dad, he started encouraging me to exercise, but not like working out, but like getting into sports. And he started pushing me to look up to athletes
Mhm.
and taking me to athletic events and showing me how tough the girls that ran cross country were and how tough the girls that played softball were and how
Yeah.
much fun they were having when they finished their events and everything. And I went out for sports and I fought the natural tendencies of my body all of my life, like fought
Mhm.
tooth and nail, painful fights. Like when I would run, I sounded like I was dying. I looked like I was dying. I was in pain. My back would feel like somebody had rammed a couple of hot knitting needles down on either side of my spine. My lungs were sore. Um, my diaphragm was sore. I would get stitches in my side like you wouldn't believe. And I would throw up after the race,
I see.
just gushes of mucus. and pass out, and my dad would walk with me at the end of the race when like I'd be walking unconscious, and then I'd come to, and there's my dad. And we fought that battle for from the time I was I went out for cross country my freshman year in high school until my junior year in high school. My lungs finally caught up in development to where they should be. Now I still had asthma. I had to get allergy shots. I did a bunch of other things. But nature is not the end all be all of your life and how you're going to develop and how you do things. You can go against it. And if you don't, all the handicaps that you have, if you just let them take their natural course and you do everything in the world to accommodate those handicaps, all they are ever going to do over time is get worse. They will never get better. They won't maintain at level. You degenerate. It's degenerative. Every handicap becomes degenerative if you over accommodate it, right? Yeah. So you take that back to, yes, when women are pregnant, we are less movable. As we start to balloon out, like my pregnancy was weird. I didn't even show till the 5th month, and then like halfway through the 5th month, all of a sudden I was huge. And from there, so it was like I went halfway through my pregnancy and then popped outward, and then the rest of my pregnancy I just had this humongous, like, oversized pregnancy belly. But
you knew though, right? I mean,
I knew. Okay. But I didn't show. And it was just funny like that, and like I had those bizarre stretch marks because of that. But when you hit that point where the belly gets big and you're retaining water and you're nauseous all the time. I was nauseous the whole pregnancy, by the way. That never went away. Like morning sickness, they're like, oh yeah, at the beginning of your pregnancy you're gonna have morning sickness for a couple of months. Like I was still throwing up in the morning from empty belly, like the 9th month. So a week before labor. So there's a lot of handicaps that you experience during pregnancy that don't happen during the rest of your life. And they're not the same as, like, I'm a little fat now as compared to what I was when, I'm 50. And we just got out of the COVID season's over, hopefully. But like the whole, you don't get to do anything. You don't get to go anywhere. You don't get to go to the gym, and all that stuff. And my exercise routine at home is not the same. So I'm a little fat now, and I notice that does affect your mobility, but it's nothing compared to pregnancy, because you're dealing with a whole different set of bodily issues, right? So it's fair to say that a pregnant woman, is going to have needs that other adults do not have, regardless of gender. And it's fair to say that if you want the next generation to pop out, that you're going to make some concessions during the pregnancy for the pregnant woman. Where that stops in terms of how gynocentric society should be is it's also vital to the welfare of the child that both parents are there throughout the child's upbringing, right? So you certainly don't want to sacrifice the father. And you certainly don't want to sacrifice the child's other male family members either.
Right.
So this idea that men can just be disposable for women is humongous overkill. And then the other thing is, it's also totally not fair to say that a woman who is not currently pregnant still needs those concessions. Right? You don't have to. And it's fair to say that men are, on average, stronger, faster, have greater endurance, and smarter than women. That last one's gonna piss off every woman I know, but it's true on average. If you take the just the top half of men and the top half of women IQ wise, you get higher IQs from the male side than the female side, and you get more high IQs from the male side than the female side. And just from everything that I've read about and experienced, at the other end of it, you also get more low IQs on the low IQ end.
Sure.
So men sort of tend to, there are more men who are intellectually disabled than there are women, and there are more men who are geniuses than there are women. But I think on average, men are smarter in a lot of ways than women. I think it's partly because they have to do mental exercise that women don't. But it's
Right.
also partly biological. But it doesn't necessarily, it's not stark enough of a difference that men owe anything to women for it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you kind of get what I meant
Right.
by my premise here, right? Basically, I'm just objecting to the idea that we are so uh, caught up on our instincts to service and die for womankind
Right.
that the free will part doesn't kick in. Because it's interesting that you
Oh,
said men.
yeah, that
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was focusing on the biological imperative, but that biological imperative is it's much more limited than we treat it, but it does create social norms. I don't think that we're dealing strictly with an instinct. I think a lot of what we believe are instincts are really social norms.
I 100% agree with that one. It's because I'm an objectivist, right? So we're not fond of the idea that we're primarily, if at all, are guided by instinct, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, and so here's the thing. It's funny that you mentioned that men are generally more smarter. Whatever, regardless of whatever anyone thinks of that, I want to take that statement and pit it against the argument that men are hardwired and they're instinctively doing these things, because to me that's the argument from stupidity and
Oh yeah,
mindlessness. And
definitely.
right, that's my premise on this whole thing.
Right, and I think you know the difference between a social standard or a social norm and an instinct, like we have a social norm that if you drop a piece of food on the floor, we have developed a sense of disgust around picking it up and eating it without cleaning it off,
Sure.
because we have knowledge that there's germs and dust and dirt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
An instinct is more, if the circumstances that you're in at the moment cause you to have a sense of danger, a sense of immediate or impending threat,
Hmm.
there's the set of reactions that we have, mostly fight or flight. Feminists have sort of introduced this or freeze concept,
Hmm.
which I'm not entirely sure I buy. I think that's not natural. I think the freeze reaction is not a natural reaction. I think it's a programmed reaction in people who are taught not to exercise their personal agency. And I think people
Yes.
who are raised to exercise their personal agency are more likely to their fight or flight instinct is just that. They're either going
Hmm.
to fight or they're going to run away. And
Right.
that instinctive reaction is a sense of self-preservation.
Hmm.
But there's nothing self-preservation related in terms of sacrificing yourself um, in a non progeny threatening situation. So I could say it would be instinctive for a parent to try, mother or father, to try to protect their child even at the expense of their own life. That might be instinctive, right? But for men to feel like they have to, in every way, subjugate their interests to women's interests, I don't think that can be instinctive, because you're not preserving anything there. You're just
Right.
devaluing yourself.
For sure. I mean, I would say that if you're uh, acting in terms of your own self-preservations and your self-interest and the preservations of those you will love, those are value responses to me. I mean, that's the way I've kind of processed this whole thing. It's like it's not mindlessness, right? It's basically, there's probably some programming, but that doesn't mean there's zero free will about it either. So I think the conversation gets often confused, and there's not enough appeal to free will in terms of men's behavior when even arguing for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think this goes back to the agency discussion too.
Hmm.
Like, and even with fight or flight, when you think about it, all right, when you look at our laws in regarding intimate partner and sexual violence, women are very protected under those laws, you know. But for instance, if a man is in a situation where he is facing an immediate threat and he defends himself, and it's a defense that that occurs as a manifestation of his fight or flight response. Even if he barely had the ability or opportunity to restrain himself from allowing that reaction to happen, if the perpetrator that was attacking him, that was threatening him, was female, our society condemns him for it. So men are expected, when it benefits women, men are expected to even restrain their own animal instincts. We don't treat women as if that same expectation applies. And so even if the argument that there's an instinct in men to subjugate their interests to women's interests, if we're going to expect men to confront the instinct to defend themselves, why couldn't we expect men to subjugate that instinct, to confront that instinct as well? I don't believe that instinct is as prominent or big, like as deep and wide as people think. There may be an instinct to protect your female loved ones just out of as a feature or a bug of the fact that if you're pregnant or future pregnancy, carrying wife dies before your child is born, that you don't reproduce, and the people that protected their pregnant wives, their genes carried on. But I just can't see it as an all-encompassing instinct that would affect all things men do, or even the majority of them. I think it'd be more a human instinct to protect your loved ones and to value them enough that you're gonna engage in some level of compromise and self-sacrifice. But I just can't see like the gynocentrism that we see in our society today being instinctive. I think I don't think there's even a remote possibility that it's instinctive. And what is instinctive, we can overreact to it and lead to this kind of thing. But I think both men and women should be expected to confront that instinct and not allow it to rule them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So yeah, I guess the conclusion of what I was saying there is just basically, you take it back to the asthma thing. Instinctively, if you're short of breath, you want to sit down, you want to relax. It's instinctively you're trying to preserve yourself. You have a sense of danger from not being able to breathe, a sense of distress, and you want to give in to that. It was vital. Like, I'm 29 years out of warranty now. I like no replacement on parts or labor, no replacement coverage, right? Right. But yeah, if I had done what was instinctive when I was growing up instead of what my dad pushed me to do, my whole life would have been much worse, and it would have been much shorter. My son would never have been born. I never would have gotten to be stepmom to my stepdaughters. I wouldn't get to be a grandma now. I'm a grandma now. I would never, ever have gotten to have any relationship at all with my husband. And we went through stages of friendship and being the friend that's there at the end of a bad relationship, and then dating and everything, and through up into marriage, and we've been together for years and years, and all of those experiences would just be gone if I never fought my instincts.
Right.
And men have it way worse in a lot of ways than that. I think, in addition to the deadly sacrifice that we expect of men, the quality of life sacrifices that we expect of men are just absolutely insane. And it's why women overall have a 5 year longer, 5 to I think 7 year longer, and depending on which industrialized nation we live in,
Sure. Right.
lifespan. And then on top of that, you have all of the pain and suffering, the injuries, the chronic pain and so on. What I described my mom going through, from my observations of the people around me and the people that have contacted me to talk about it, it's mostly a male experience.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense. Yeah.
right, so all of that self-sacrifice impacts the entire male population on a level that I don't think most women can even comprehend. It's a horrible thing to do to men. And it doesn't necessarily, like, even if you used benefiting women as an excuse, which I don't think it is, it doesn't benefit women as much as people think, because we need struggle in order to be successful. Humans need struggle in order
Right.
to have achievement.
Yeah.
And
More
male
specifically, it's
sacrifice,
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, the overdoing of male sacrifice inadvertently, instead of being a thing that makes everything great for women, it enables women the way you enable a drug addict
Right.
to avoid their struggle. And it exacerbates the level of failure among women because they don't realize the importance of that struggle, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's harming men for nothing. It feels like, a lot of men feel like they're sacrificing for something, but they're not, and we should stop asking them to do that.
Right. Absolutely. And most of the time, they're not even going to be around to reap any kind of societal rewards for being man.
Right.
Right? Because war immediately comes to mind. This idea that you'll be rewarded and respected for dying, but uh, you know, for someone like me, I say, do I get a chance to live?
Yeah.
So
Your statue in the village square will enjoy all of the people coming around to pay homage
mhm.
in your stead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And no, I agree completely there. I don't want that to be men's lot in life.